Hello again, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of our weekly CRICKETher social isolation podcast. Here in the UK, we've been in lockdown for nearly a month now, so we're obviously at home still, but...
And try not to go crazy.
But this week, by the magic of green screen, where are we broadcasting from, Sid?
We're in the long room at Lord's, which is cricket's holy of holies, and somewhere where you wouldn't have been allowed in until quite recently, Raf, would you?
No, by virtue of being a woman. So yeah, women obviously only admitted to membership of the MCC and thus entry into the pavilion and the long room in 1998. And I was actually chatting to Enya Bakewell a few weeks ago, an interview that's just been published in the Pinch Hitter, the latest edition of the Pinch Hitter. So plug for the Pinch Hitter, go and download it now. And it's basically free, although it's kind of pay what you can. But yeah, so Enya Bakewell played in the first ever women's match at Lord's in 1976, and it was an ODI between England and Australia. And England won the toss and chose to field, and they were coming down as a team to go out onto the pitch, and they didn't know whether they were allowed in the long room because it was obviously this very sacred space, and women had never been allowed in other than the Queen. That was the exception. So instead of going through the long room on their way out to the middle, they went out the back of the pavilion and round the side. If anyone knows the layout of Lord's, that's what you have to do if you're not going through the long room. And then the Australians, who, as my dad would say, were a bit uncouth and didn't really understand the kind of, the importance of the long room as a space, just the two Australian openers just walked straight through the long room out to bat. So then the English team were just like, oh, okay, we could have gone through it then. And then when they went off for the innings break, they did go through it as well. So it's quite a funny story. But yes, we are in the long room. Hurrah. So the big news this week, Sid, as far as women's cricket is concerned, is about the teams who have qualified for the 2021 World Cup in New Zealand have been announced by the ICC, and there was a little bit of uncertainty around that, partly because a couple of series couldn't be played because of the coronavirus. So they've announced that the points for those two series will be split, and then slightly more controversially, they've announced that the points for the unplayed India-Pakistan series, which was due to be played last year, so wasn't affected by coronavirus, have also been split, and that means that the teams who have qualified automatically for 2021 are New Zealand, by virtue of being hosts, even though they finished 6th, and then the top 4 teams, which are England, Australia, South Africa, and India, because of this decision that's just been made. So what do you make of it all, Sid?
Well, I mean, it was the decision we were expecting. So essentially, the Indian government have been discouraging the BCCI from playing the series against Pakistan. So they haven't been played in this round of the International Championship. They weren't played last time either. What happened last time was that all the points were awarded to Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And if that had happened on this occasion, then Pakistan would have actually qualified ahead of India. So what went on this time? Well, what went on this time wasn't a surprise, actually, because the ICC had already changed the rules. They changed the rules essentially to say that if the series couldn't be played for any reason that the cricket board could vaguely pretend was outside of their control, which was certainly the case in this, then the points would be shared. So we were aware all along that the points were likely to be shared.
I think India were... last time around, India had to play in the qualifying tournament, didn't they? So yeah. That's possibly one reason why the BCCI were quite keen to change things this time around.
Well, the ICC is not a democracy, really, is it? So, and the BCCI obviously have the loudest voice because, they're the biggest cheese in cricket. And, that's what happens under these circumstances. So, not an unexpected decision, but possibly a little bit harsh on Pakistan. I think the Hypercourse made an interesting point on Twitter, saying that if the Sri Lankan government had prevented their team from playing, then the Sri Lanka would have got way more points than they did, and would have actually come reasonably close to automatic qualification themselves just by not playing most of their games.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, you can sort of see a situation where if people actually took this to its logical conclusion, then everyone would, for example, go, "Oh, sorry, we can't play our series against Australia," and Australia would end up with 3 shared points from every single series because no one would play them. Of course, that's not likely to happen, again for the same reasons that that India have got the political clout to go, "No, we're not playing it." If everyone started doing that, then those other boards wouldn't have that clout, and the rules would be changed again. So
I think it's important to say that the India and Pakistan teams don't have any beef with each other personally, and that they would have been, I bet Harmanpreet Kaur would have been quite keen to play that series if it had been anything to do with them. But obviously it isn't. It's kind of above their pay grade, as we might say in England.
It's all politics. And it's all politics, it's above even the men's cricket playground. The situation in the men's game is exactly the same. It's not particularly to do with the women's game. So.
No, it's just that the ICC Women's Championship has created this situation where India and Pakistan are expected to play a bilateral series every 4 years, aren't they? At least once. And in some ways it's amazing that they set up the championship in that way initially, but I wonder whether it's one of those things where it was just like, oh well, this is just the women's game, so we're not paying very much attention to what they're doing when they first agreed it.
Yeah, and I think some people that set it up were probably hopeful that that this could provide a way in which India and Pakistan could play each other, and I think that there was certainly hope going into this round that the boards would be able to persuade their governments to look past that and look past the political situation and to play these matches, but that obviously hasn't been the case.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's a bit disappointing because it does. I think I tweeted at the time. It slightly calls into question the integrity of the whole qualifying procedure in a way. Talking of which, actually, what does this mean in terms of the qualifying tournament for the 50 over World Cup is meant to be happening in Sri Lanka in July, and so from the top 8 teams, it would be Pakistan and Sri Lanka and the West Indies would be now having to go through that qualifying tournament, and then there'd be the other teams.
Your Bangladeshis and your
Thailand
and so on,
Ireland, etc. So, how is that likely to go ahead? And if not, how are they going to decide who qualifies?
Yeah, well, I mean, predictably we've had no indication officially. The official line is that there's still hope that tournament will go ahead at some point. If you ask me, is it going to happen? I don't think so. My guess is that it won't happen, and then the only option is going to be to allow the ICC Championship teams to be the ones that go through. I can't see any argument where it's going to be anyone other than the 3 championship teams that will go through. But there's actually even more to it, isn't there, Raf? Because there's also the issue of who qualifies for the next ICC Championship.
Yeah, because they've announced that they've already announced, was it last year, that they're going to expand it from being 8 teams to 10 teams next time around, because
which was fantastic news.
Yeah. And because it means that that's 2 other teams who are going to have this effectively what's a future tours programme laid out for them. And I guess at the time that was announced, probably Ireland would have been hopeful of being one of the teams who might have been included. But since that time, Thailand have kind of jumped up the rankings a bit, haven't they? And actually, if the qualifying tournament didn't go ahead, you'd think that it would be decided based on who the current top 10 ranked teams are. So that would be the 8 current ones plus
Bangladesh and Thailand.
Right.
So they would look likely to be the teams that would contest that, and that's unfortunate for Ireland. They're not going to get any opportunity to boost their ranking or anything like that.
Because obviously Ireland had introduced these kind of semi-professional contracts, hadn't they? I can't remember exactly how many. It was a handful, wasn't it? And they were obviously investing in this cycle of the championship in order to try and make sure that in the next cycle they could bump up their ranking and be included. I'm assuming that was part of the thinking behind it. Yeah,
and it just hasn't worked out for them. It's really unfortunate for Ireland. unfortunately their timing's been terrible. They've had a load of retirements. They've struggled bringing in younger players. They've obviously got one world-class player in Kim Garth, and they've got another lot of solid players underneath that. But they're unfortunately, they're not able to at this stage replace your Joyces and your Metcalfs that have retired. And it's been tough for them. They've lost players to hockey, which in Ireland provides a much more certain course. If you're a girl in Ireland and you're sort of 16 and you're making that choice, honestly, you'd be mad not to choose hockey, because hockey gives you the chance to compete at the very highest levels. It gives you the chance to play in the Olympics, and it's much better funded than cricket is, unfortunately. It's a bit of a sad story, really, and can Ireland keep going for another 4 years and hope that perhaps the championship is expanded again in 4 years' time, or that somebody else falls down? You don't want somebody else to fall down just so Ireland can qualify, because we want to carry on expanding, but it's going to be a tough 4 years for Ireland if they're not part of that setup.
It really does show the dilemmas of those middle tier teams, doesn't it, that are just below, and just, so say 5 years ago Ireland would have been very competitive, and actually as professionalism of the top 8 teams and top 10 teams actually now expands, then you inevitably get the teams just below that fall even further behind, and it creates this gap, and it's very difficult to know how you close that. I've actually written something for the latest edition of the Cricket Ireland magazine on this particular topic. I don't know if that's out yet, but watch out for that, because that was something that I was kind of tasked with thinking about, and I found it quite difficult, actually. One of my thoughts was that maybe you could expand the championship even further, or that you could actually just have a second tier of the championship, so you could have, say, teams ranked 11 to 20 in the world playing in a separate championship, because really the big thing is how you get your fixtures, how you get your future fixtures in place. So that could be something that the ICC might think about in future, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, the other bit of news this week in some ways it's not really news, but it's kind of just been announced unofficially through the PCA magazine, which is that Emma Lamb has been awarded a rookie contract. And you published a piece about that, didn't you, Sid?
Yeah, obviously delighted for her. She's been studying for the last few years at university. So she's finished her degree and was obviously in a position where, having done that, she needed a path forwards, and the ECB stepped in to offer her a rookie contract, which allows her to carry on focusing on cricket for a bit more time. Just to bring Hypercourse into it again, there was
Hello,
a mention
Hypercourse.
Hi, stealing all your material here. England have, we haven't had an ODI debut as a sort of full-on batsman. Nobody's batted in the top 6 on ODI debut since like 2010. That was Fran Wilson was the last person to do that. So England have been desperate to try and, or perhaps not desperate enough to try and bring in top quality batters, and so it's great news that Emma Lamb, who certainly I see primarily as a batter, has been given a chance to continue playing cricket and to train full time and hopefully push for a spot on the England team, because England are currently playing no batsman under the age. I think Amy Jones now the youngest batsman that's played in the last year or so, who's nearly 27 now. Probably will be 27 by the time she plays her next international, because of the way things are looking.
Don't say that.
Sorry, shouldn't say that. And there's a big gap down to Emma Lamb, who's 21, 22.
If she's just graduated, that's how old you normally are.
Anyway, but great news for her and a quality player. I should mention actually that I see her primarily as a batsman. I had a conversation with Mark Robinson about a year and a half ago about her, and he thinks that in the end she'll develop into someone that's primarily a bowler.
Okay.
He sees her as someone that will play as a bowler, who can bolster the batting. So that's an interesting, different take. Obviously, she's played mostly as a batsman at county. If you look at her county stats and numbers, she obviously opens the batting every time, whereas she doesn't always bowl. So she's definitely seen at county level as a sort of second change bowler, if you like. which is not to put her bowling down. It's just, what the focus is. So
she did bowl a bit in Super League as well.
yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely.
Congratulations to her. It does also shed some, amongst ourselves, we were saying actually we were expecting the contract list to have been published in January, and we haven't seen hide nor hair of it, so maybe we should chase that up to some extent. As far as we think, based on our own deductions, because they did announce the academy list late last year, and Maddie Villiers was not on the list of academy players anymore. So our deduction from that was that she has also been boosted either up to a rookie contract or a full contract. We don't know which, because nobody has made an announcement. But that's she's somebody else who is also now contracted, as far as we believe. So
and actually someone that Mark Robinson says the opposite of from Emma Lamb. That's an interesting one as well. She's been obviously played mostly as a bowler so far. Mark Robinson has mentioned about her that he sees long term she's going to be a batsman who offers a few overs. So be interesting to see how those ones pan out. Look forward to seeing where we are with those two in 5 years' time.
Yeah,
they're the future of England.
When we've actually got live cricket happening again, with any luck.
What is cricket again?
Okay, well, that's all from us this week, and we'll see you in a week's time. Stay safe and well.
Bye.